How to tick things off, and we're live. Okay, so introducing Steve Androlakis, take it away, Chair of the Steering Committee.
Okay, hello, my name's Steve. Welcome to the second steering committee of this hackathon that's coming up in November in Sydney. I guess, well, firstly, thank you for allowing me to postpone this for a week. That's not the norm, so thank you very much for doing that. It's greatly appreciated. We'll make sure that anyone who's new here has a chance to briefly introduce themselves in a second. But firstly, I just wanted to kind of outline the point of this second meeting. This is mostly going to be about updating us on how we're going for platforms, as in, container as a service, platform as a service, before ready for the event. How is that going? And the other two things I really want to tease out in this event, in this agenda, is the messaging behind the event. What is the message? What's the tagline? What are we calling the thing? And the targeting. So as far as outreach and comms goes, who are we going to target? How are we going to target them? Maybe get some commitment from some people to do some of that outreach as well once we have the right materials in order. Okay, so how about we have anyone who's new introduce themselves? Sorry, David, you might be the best person to point them out. I know Rion's new. I'm sure there are other new people.
Yeah, let's go to Alan maybe first. Alan, could you just quickly introduce yourself?
Hi guys, my name is Alan Barger. I work in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and I look after the Data Gov.au and National Map platforms. I probably should point out that that's only going to be the case until the 11th of August, at which point I move to the Department of Finance to work on GovCMS. So still happy to help out where I can with this stuff. But I've got a pretty good background. I spent the last weekend at GovHack, and it was really cool to see the kind of stuff that came out of there and the way that they did the work that they did. And maybe that will help feed into the stuff that we're doing here.
Brilliant, great, thank you. Rion, are you there? Would you be willing to introduce yourself? Oh, we just lost Rion. Never mind, which is good because I think Jess will be able to get into the call then. So also, I'll ask Graham, could you quickly introduce yourself?
Yep, so I'm Graham Dumbleton. I'm based out of Sydney. I'm developer advocate for OpenShift with Red Hat. So I'll be on the ground there on the day for doing the hackathon to help out, and also helping with all logistics of getting OpenShift up and running, getting all the people in we need to get that happening.
Excellent. So I think that is it in terms of newbies. So Steve, please carry on.
Isn't Andy Botting a significant newbie?
Oh, sorry. I'm so used to seeing Andy's lovely face at Unival. I forgot all that. Sorry, Andy. My
easily forgettable.
Yeah, hardly. Not at all. Not
significant newbie.
Oh, sorry. I'm so used to seeing Andy's lovely face at Unival. I forgot all that. Sorry, Andy. My
easily forgettable.
Yeah.
Some feedback from Jess.
I'm sorry. I'm so used to seeing Andy's lovely face at Unival. I forgot all that.
Easily forgettable. Some feedback from Jess.
Hey Jess, could you turn off your microphone? Sorry, I can't get a hold of it. Okay.
All right, is that better?
Yes. Okay,
cool.
Go for it.
Okay, so I'm Andy Botting. I'm working for the University of Melbourne on the Nectar Research Cloud. So I think my involvement with this will be to organise the infrastructure for the hackathon, and I'm going to be involved with the mentoring of the mentors, organising the roster and that sort of thing.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. And the last thing that I just would request before I give it back over to Steve is if everyone could please put their name in the Etherpad. You can see the Etherpad link is etherpad.openstack.org/p/university-hackathon. And if you could add yourself to the attending list along with any information, that would be greatly appreciated. Back over to you, Steve.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so the next thing on the agenda is to go over the previous notes and in particular the actions from the last meeting. Firstly, there's a video. I'm sure you've seen that circulated quite a bit, but if you want to let anyone else know what's going on, then feel free to send it to them. Okay, we've gone through new committee members, which I kind of jumped the gun on. There's a bunch of actions here that are probably worth going through. The first one involves myself and Diane and some of the OpenShift people. Mainly that was to get the OpenShift people introduced to Andy, who just introduced himself to our group now. That one's ongoing, as David just pointed out in the Etherpad. Right, so I'll go on to the second one, which is a container and platform as a solution. People who aren't OpenShift, so going out to others, other vendors, and so on and so forth. I've had a conversation with Cloudify. I guess that's still pending. Whether they're involved or not, to me, is still up in the air. Flanders, you might have a more recent update, but I spoke to them on Monday, and they seemed kind of interested. Perhaps if Aptera can help.
They've confirmed Aptera is going to provide mentors for Cloudify, but they've confirmed they're very interested. Okay,
fantastic. So it looks like we'll have OpenShift and Cloudify as confirmed. Next one's on you, Jess, and it's about you creating the website.
Yes, so we have a landing page up. At the moment, it's not really got much more than a date on there. Once we've got the theme confirmed, we'll be able to put some messaging and stuff like that in there. I also need to get some information from everyone who's going to be involved, whether it be mentoring or volunteering on the day, so I can start putting some profiles up there for people so the attendees know. So I'll create a document for information so I can start populating that into the website. The other thing for the website is Eventbrite so that people can purchase tickets, and the foundation is helping us with an account so we can get that set up, and that should be happening next week. And then the venue. So we're looking at Dalton House in the ATP. So I spoke with Sam yesterday, and I think we've got all that locked in. We're getting the ball rolling. We've just got to start looking at a deposit and stuff like that. So it's happening, and I should have all that on the website next week, but for the moment, it's just a landing page until I get some more information.
Great, thank you. We'll come back to some of that, I think, a bit later in this meeting, but let's move on to the infrastructure piece for now. I might actually pass it on to Andy, because the first one concerns OpenShift, and I think you've had the most recent dialogue with those people, Andy.
Yeah, I think Graham might be able to give an update maybe, but I think I'm still waiting to hear back what those guys think they need for the teams. I think at one stage I heard 16 cores and 4 gig of RAM maybe per instance or per team, but I need to confirm that.
Yeah, cool. So it's about gathering hardware requirements for setup.
Yep. This is Diane. Our technical person who is going to be on this call is on vacation right now, and he's also based in Spain. So there'll be a little bit of a time lag with Jorge. So he should be back Monday, I believe, depending on how much time we gave him off.
Excellent.
Okay, so the next one here is one that I've kind of inserted about a piece of software or a software platform called Agave. Now, Agave is clearly not as well known as something like OpenShift or another technology like Kubernetes or something like that. A lot of people are probably asking, well, what is Agave? the best explanation I have before I pass it on to Rion is that it's a way of putting a web API onto high performance computing queues. This is obviously really maybe much less important to the enterprise, but kind of great interest to universities. And one of the organizations I work for, Nectar, the Nectar Cloud, has been taking a very serious look at implementing Agave for our research communities. So Rion has kindly agreed to come here and just give a few minutes spiel on what Agave is. He's actually the principal, I believe he's the principal developer behind it. And what we're looking at doing is perhaps having that available as an option during the hackathon for people who more want to deal with high performance computing as opposed to containers. Rion, or Rion actually dropped out and never came back. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, he's been able to provide slides on the right-hand side there. So I think that's probably a good update, because obviously this is very specific to the researcher scientific crowd. So obviously there'll be some people interested, but I think people can look over those slides if they're interested. But the action probably here is to get Andy to liaise with Rion on if Agave can be set up on Nectar or not. And I think that there's some internal help for Nectar that can support that anyways.
Yep. There's been a lot of work done at the University of Melbourne around setting that up in a test environment, and I hear it's gone well. So yeah, maybe it's best to follow up on our side there. But anyway, just a heads up, if you see the word Agave, you kind of know what we're talking about now, and it's very much a university crowd kind of, or market kind of thing, and a high performance computing kind of thing. All right, so next up is Cloudify. I don't think there's anything more to say. We kind of covered that earlier, unless you've got anything to add, say Flanders or Jess. Okay. And Alan's actually here, which is really good, because there's a kind of question here, a couple of questions here that affect how this event will be run. One of them is what data sets, if any, should we provide? We've talked about this event not being about ideation and this event about taking existing solutions. We haven't really talked about data sets and what we might point out or make available to people on the day. And the other thing is Alan gave a lot of information on kind of the government scene, the Australian government kind of open data scene is what I call it. And so maybe Alan, you want to kind of introduce, the government open data kind of initiatives, and talk about some data sets maybe and how they might relate to this event.
So speaking kind of bluntly, they're like data sets on DataGov probably aren't really going to be your be all and end all for big data things that you're kind of trying to do, because obviously DataGov is sort of limited in scope. So I don't know if you guys know much about DataGov or CCAN. DataGov runs in the cloud. It runs on a platform called CCAN. CCAN does some cool things around being able to take small data sets and that are CSV and give them API endpoints, so you can make microservices out of data sets. It's really cool to have informational endpoints for that kind of stuff. We also have a GeoServer, which allows for spatial information to be hosted, and we also have National Map, which allows for spatial data to be visualized. One of the things that you talk about in terms of goal setting or your ideas is I take from GovPack was really interesting. Was the reason for me why GovPack works is they have very clear sets and goals in mind for people to work towards, or like problems they're trying to solve. So, people set bounties and people set the prizes to be very specifically around a problem that they have or around a data set that they want people to use. Now, I know that this isn't necessarily about data sets, so it's kind of hard to dive in and talk about any specific stuff. But I know that BOM released an API for GovHack, which might be interesting for you guys. There's some interesting, like, large-scale weather data as well that they released in bulk. There's obviously the company's information, but all these things, like when we start talking about, these are big in the scale of open data and Australian government, things that you can't necessarily open in an Excel file because it's more than 1 million rows. But when we're talking about the high power computing you're talking about here, it's a little bit trivial. Like even one of the biggest data sets I've ever had on DataGov was about 25 million rows or 350 million rows, which isn't really going to put into it. So I think it might be a bit premature to talk about data sets. We are doing some actually really cool things with Data 61. It's kind of exciting that you guys are going to be at ATP. We're doing we're working towards a sort of cloud native application for discovering data, and we're calling it Magda, or Making Australian Government Data Available. And it's an open source project we're doing with Data 61. It's got Kubernetes built in, and it's trying to sort of abstract away, in the way that National Map does, abstract away the idea that data comes from agencies across the Australian spectrum, and because it is quite a, there are something like 600 jurisdictions if you include all the local governments, and try to just make it easier for people to find data. And so if you guys want to have a look at that, that's available at search.data.gov.au, that new alpha. It's kind of cool. It's kind of the thing we're working on, but I don't think I'm necessarily answering your question. I think it'd probably be easier if you guys had more specific questions that you wanted to ask.
Yeah, cool. No, thanks. That's really, which I really should follow up on, given it, like you say, it's kind of container based and orchestrated. Yeah, and you've as well. Yeah, right, indeed. And you've touched on something that's actually really crucial, and we'll come back to later in this meeting when we start talking about prizes and judging and stuff. In an event that's not primarily about coming up with new ideas based on existing data sets, how do you reward people for doing good work? And so we'll come back to that, I think, a bit later. But thanks, Alan.
Oh, sorry. And the other thing, and I might as well do it now. And the other thing that I think was really good in GovHack was the requirement to actually open source whatever you make. So yeah, I don't know if you guys are going to do that with requiring people to put up a GitHub repo at the end of it or whatever with their code so that other people can reuse it. I thought that was another really strong and a really useful thing for, learning for government from GovHack, was that we could do that a little bit more effectively if we knew we could quite easily pick up the code.
Great.
At the end of it.
Excellent. I think that's extremely worth considering, and the university kind of developer crowd has a culture of open source anyway for the most part, so I think it'd be uncontroversial, but thanks for pointing that out. That's something to put down. Does anyone have anything else to say about anything to do with platforms or anything you've heard in the last 10 minutes? Okay.
I do think it's worth, Steve, just taking a minute, because I think the most important comment that Alan's made is the idea of the mentors and the bounty. So whether or not we use a bounty to encourage people to hack on a particular data set, or Graham and I were talking last night about the ability to suggest people try to use certain design patterns, whether it is like some kind of CI/CD pipeline that we want to encourage teams to try out, like a blue-green deployment or a canary deployment, or deploying from GitHub directly into a container environment that OpenShift provides. I think these kind of are the prizes that people need to kind of be thinking about when we get down to that conversation, and that'll be the topic for the next steering committee meeting. But I think introducing this concept now and getting people thinking about it's going to be an important brainstorm that we'll need to do next steering committee.
Okay, cool. We ready to move on to the next one, which is about themes and audiences? Okay, so of particular interest to me is how we, I guess, position this event or sell this event, quote unquote, to the audience. What is it about? What is the tagline that people are going to remember? And what's the thing that's going to make people excited to come? And who are those audiences? So, I mean, I guess I could just read this list, but I'd kind of be more interested in hearing what people have to say. In fact, maybe since I've been talking a lot, maybe I'll actually kindly ask Jess to take over this section. She's still around.
Yep, still here.
Cool.
Yeah, so I know we've been tossing around a few ideas about themes at the last meeting, and Steve and I have had a bit of a chat about this. But the theme is definitely one of the most important things in terms of defining who we're going to invite and how we're going to get the right audience to come along it's also going to be quite important for sponsors as well, which we need to start reaching out to pretty urgently. So it's something that I'd like to get locked in pretty quickly. We've got a couple of ideas on the Etherpad there that we've discussed previously, and I've put a couple of, like, I guess, votes beside some that I think might work both in terms of marketing and reaching out to particular audiences. So it would be really good if everyone could maybe put in their feedback for some of those themes. And once we've got one locked in, then I can start working on some messaging and stuff like that. So does anyone have any feedback on the themes that we've got listed in that Etherpad at the moment?
Yes, I'll throw my hat in the rings for hacking up the stack, only because it sounds cute and it's kind of about the technology. The downside to that one is that it doesn't specifically sort of talk about universities or anything like that, or science or anything like that, but that's kind of okay with me.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that one's actually really good in terms of marketing for things like hashtags and whatever else. So it's got a good flow to it, I think. But even lift and shift, because we're going for the, like, not creating a new app, we're innovating with existing apps. I think lift and shift kind of really fits that messaging well. So I think that's another possibility. But anyone else have any feedback?
Yeah. I think that the lift and shift comes from that 3 patterns conversation we had last time.
Put your votes. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think the lift and shift comes from the 3 patterns that we talked about of migrating to cloud native. And I failed to send the presentation, so I'll add that link in a bit. But I think there could maybe be take the 3 different patterns of migrating to cloud native. One of them was extend, the other one was lift and shift, and the third one was a complete rewrite. So somehow work in the pattern stuff and use that as some of the education points leading up to the stuff.
Yeah, cool. That's a good idea.
So I really like that idea, especially because I think this will be, Graham and I last night actually had a chat around the cheat sheet page that'll need to go on the website, because obviously we'll need to accumulate kind of an FAQ of resources for people who will be attending, both mentors as well as participants, and being able to have a structure to that page, I think would be really valuable. In fact, I'd even suggest that maybe this is kind of it's listed below, but there's probably an action on Andy and Jess to liaise to start creating that cheat sheet page on the website along with the mentor bios, so that people have knowledge going into the event, what kind of things they should know, so they're not just showing up completely unawares as to the technologies and the platforms that we're going to be providing.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the information that I've got from the Guadalajara and Taiwan teams as well. So I'm still working through some of that information to create an Australian cheat sheet and information that we can give to all attendees and mentors as well. So once I've got all of that information consolidated, I'll throw it up on the website.
Great. It's looking like hacking up the stack is getting a lot of the votes here.
Yeah, I think we might be sold on that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, okay, cool. All right, so there is the next thing to talk about here is actually prizes, if we're done with that kind of the theme part of it. Now, I what I was saying before is kind of, yeah, it's really important to me to get the themes of the prizes right. It's going to be difficult to have specific themes for things like, healthcare or something like that, because if you're not a healthcare team, then you're kind of precluded from getting a prize. And what if you're from some other domain that's not covered? And so it's really important for us to get I guess the bounty and the prizes right for these teams and what we're asking them to do. One of the just to give some personal opinion before I throw it out, is the idea of having prizes for certain patterns mightn't be a bad idea, as long as those patterns are explained really clearly, and as long as it's realistic to expect people to take their applications and put them in a certain cloud architecture pattern within the space of 40 hours. But anyone else got thoughts on prizes and that kind of thing?
So I was speaking with Cloudify yesterday, and they'd love to send some prizes along. They're not going to be able to attend in person, but they're definitely interested in sending some prizes. We discussed different ideas, and it would be great to have prizes that were in line with the overall theme. But they were also looking into sending things like maybe drones or like little pieces like that. Something that people would be interested in, or did you want to keep it closer to the overall theme of the hackathon?
I think drones are cute. I don't think the prizes themselves need to be like necessarily themed themselves, but that's just kind of my opinion. Feel free to give yours, anyone. Yeah, I mean, and things like Cloudify, I mean, we could go, I'm not sure what's usually done in these events, but you could always have a best use of Cloudify prize, for example, to encourage people to use the platform, and a best use of OpenShift prize, have it kind of be vendor specific as well.
Yeah.
That way people can give, that way we won't get into the awkward situation of everyone adopting one kind of platform just because they do, and sort of, someone being caught out in the rain. That's another kind of way that we could split things.
Yeah.
I guess the other obvious question is who have seen prizes that have been quite effective in supporting people. So, for example, I've seen everything in previous hackathons from prizes being given that were a dinner with a certain set of experts. So. Again, this could be something like, being able to have dinner with the OpenShift core tech team to be able to talk about how, people could use their application better with that, and everything. I also think things like the IoT stuff work. So if you have, some drones and then you're proposing to control those drones via certain ways, that's not a bad idea. I think the important thing to remember is that we're trying to challenge participants to be able to try out things that we know that work. We don't want to give them impossible missions, but we want to give them ideas of, oh, well, we want to see who can, do the best orchestration of containers or something like that. So keeping the prizes open without making it too painful. Oh, and yes, someone's just put in tickets to the next event. Yes, absolutely. We've had a previous hackathons, we've given tickets to the grand prize winners, which included things like flights and hotel, or one or the other to attend a future hackathon event and be judges at it, or even participate that way.
Full passes to OpenStack Summit in Sydney.
So it's probably worth mentioning, Denise, I don't know if you want to say anything, but the foundation has been talking about whether or not they give passes to the Sydney Summit itself to everyone, or whether they give passes to just the Luna Park stuff. Denise, do you want to update people on kind of that where we're at with that conversation?
Yeah, so we're still talking about that. I know that one of the things that we were thinking about is offering tickets to the Vancouver Summit, just because the Sydney Summit is just right there. So still under discussion, but open for any guidance from this group if you think going to the Sydney Summit is better than going to the Vancouver Summit. Obviously, there's a price difference in a flight, kind of stuff.
I have a bias because I'm in Vancouver, but I'd actually say that most of the people I think who are going to be participating aren't going to be able to afford the flight to Vancouver from Australia. So and they may be students, and I don't know what time of the year, it might be the school year or something, but it would be nice to get those folks into the fold quickly rather than waiting 6 months. So the sooner the better. Mm-hmm. And if they use the pass, they do. If they don't, they don't. And maybe the grand prize is is a ticket to Vancouver, a paid travel ticket to Vancouver. You know, we could get sponsors or something with a full pass to OpenStack Summit, and Diane takes them all out for beer in Vancouver because I know where that is.
Okay.
I think that's the best idea yet. Personal tour of Vancouver sounds great. People are shaking their heads. Yes. Diane, just another question on that. So I agree with that prize, but the other question is do we want to try to advocate up to the foundation that we should be giving a certain number of free tickets to the summit to people who participate? Do we feel that people would want to come along after a long hackathon weekend? Is that something we should be advocating for? I'd welcome feedback on what people think about that.
I think definitely. These are people who are going to be enthusiastic enough to do the hackathon. They may not come for all of the summit things, but they might come in for some of the parties or days or whatever it is. But you know, it's worthwhile to get that fresh blood into the OpenStack arena, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Jess, we were talking about charging a minimal fee to the attendees, so that might be a nice way to say, hey, you know, if you pay $39, then you get access to the summit and all of the after parties or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the fee isn't so much to try and get any revenue from the attendees. It's more of a guarantee that they'll actually show up. For most events, most of the OpenStack events that I've run, we usually get a 20% no-show rate. And for something like a hackathon, I think we really want to bring this number down as much as we can. So just a minimal fee, I think $20 or $30 is enough for university students to pay, considering that all that food and drinks and everything is covered during the event. So, and if we're giving them a pass to Luna Park or something as well, then I think that it's a lot of value for them.
So maybe what we do is not give it to everybody who signs up, but everybody who manages to deploy an application. So, there's some incentive for people to show up, the $30 or whatever it is, and then they get a pass if they can get it.
To get people to attend.
Yeah.
Sign up if you sort of front door it with a fee.
Okay.
I really like that idea, Diane. I think that's a great incentive for all the participants to run through the finish line. I will definitely take that forward to the foundation.
Yeah. I'm having a little bit of connectivity issues, so just bear with me.
I'm not sure you particularly want to gatekeep people from getting involved by putting a fee.
Somebody is very faint. I'm not sure if it's me or...
Yeah, Alan, we've got a very quiet you at the moment.
Yeah, I got it. I've taken care of it, Steve. Go ahead.
Taking care of it. You hit the little button with the trapdoor. And, all right. So, anyway, so thank you. We made a lot of headway with the prizes there, I feel. And I was happy with everything personally. And so that's fantastic. I'm willing to move on. I'm about to put Jess on the spot again about the actual event logistics. But before I go on, I think it's been mentioned a couple of times, the ATP. I just want to clarify, that's the Australian Technology Park, it's called, in Sydney. Is that what ATP stands for?
Yep, that's it.
Cool. Okay, cool. It's just for those internationals and also for people who aren't as familiar with Sydney, just to clarify what that is. Awesome. All right, well, take it away, Jeff.
So the ATP is quite easy to get to. It's just at Redfern, so it's only a couple of stops from the CBD. So it's relatively close to where the summit location will be held. I went down to Sydney a couple of weeks ago and I checked out about 4 or 5 locations, and this one is definitely the most suitable. In terms of cost, we're looking at a very similar cost for all of the venues that I looked at. Essentially, I've got them to waive the room hire fees and we're just paying for catering. So the costs are going to largely depend on the amount of attendees that we have. we're looking at around 100 grand for the venue for 2 days. And that includes all meals for 2 days, drinks. We've got essentially three rooms within the one very confined space, and we can scale between 250 and 500 people. So our absolute minimum would be 250 people, but obviously I'm hoping that we get more attendees than that. So let's aim big. The venue has one large room that we will have for the hacking, the catering, and for people to stay in. And then we've got a theatre room to the side where we can do all the presentations and stuff like that. So it's all together. It'll keep everyone close. We're not segmenting people into separate rooms or anything like that. So I think it's going to work very well. The only cost, the only concern that I have is cost, but that's going to be a factor anywhere we go because we're essentially just paying for catering. So we've been chatting with the foundation regarding sponsorship. We're going to lean on them pretty strongly to help us lock in 2 major sponsors to help cover these costs, and a bunch of smaller sponsors to help cover incidentals, and that can be in kind or 10, 15 grand, something like that, something much smaller. But the venue's locked in. I just got confirmation from her about 5 minutes ago, so we're good to go there.
Great.
That's pretty much it. Does anyone have any questions about the venue?
No, I mean, aside from cost, are there any other downsides you see to the venue?
No, it's perfect. Very close in terms of transport, keeping everyone all together. The girl who is actually going to be taking care of us helped to secure the OpenStack Foundation at ICC. So she's all over OpenStack, knows exactly what we want. She's been involved in hackathons before, so it's a very good fit.
Awesome. That's fantastic. Thank you. I just had a look at this website and it's fantastic. Do you want to explain how that came to be?
That's this guy right here. So we just needed a landing page, just something to send people to while we're still putting together the theme and messaging and mentor profiles and everything like that. Because we weren't sure on the theme, we went for something that was a little bit more generic. We weren't sure if it was going to be sciencey, so we kind of went with the cloud and lightning theme there. So we can sort of incorporate the theme throughout the rest of the website as well, so it's kind of flexible with what we do there. But it looks pretty cool and eye-catching, so that was the overall goal.
Yeah, I think it looks awesome. Yeah. Okay, I'm just going through these logistics. Event volunteers. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of stuff here that has your name on it, Jess. So you want to take us through registration, hardware, mentors, food, cloud, et cetera,
So registration, I'm going to be working with the foundation on that, but we'll need to sort of put together a bit of a plan for what that's going to look like, how big the teams are going to be, how much we're going to be charging for tickets, for group tickets, all that kind of stuff. So that's a work in progress. Hardware, that's something that I'm going to be relying on all you guys for. So we'll continue working on that. Mentors, yeah, as I mentioned, I really need to get some mentor profiles happening on the website. So it would be great to get an idea of exactly who is going to be mentoring the attendees throughout the event and what their skill sets are, so we can help to advertise that as well. I'm thinking I might start a document and get everyone to throw some information in there just to say, these are the skills that I can bring to the hackathon. This is maybe what I've done in the past, and we can throw a little profile up there for everyone. Food, all covered by the venue. That's probably another add-on that we can provide to people who may not be able to afford a larger sponsorship packages. There's things like sponsoring the popcorn stand or a donut wall or something like that. So it's pretty flexible with what sort of snacks we want to provide in the afternoon, and we can get little sponsors in to help out with that. Budget will be ongoing. I need to pay a 50% deposit to lock in the venue. So I'm assuming this is something that Aptera would put up to start with, and then we'd go ahead and get some sponsors to help recoup some of those costs as well. PR, I have a PR contact that I work with very closely. She also works with the foundation directly, so she's going to be helping out with PR throughout the event. We've got some pre-event press releases scheduled, and then some after the event as well, just to talk about the teams and the outcomes and stuff like that. Judges and volunteers, again, that's something that we need to work on. Now that we have the theme locked in, I'll start working on the email to go out to people so we can start inviting people and ask for their help there.
Yeah, so judge selection and discussing candidates for who would be good judges is probably something for the next meeting.
Yeah. So I'll start working on the messaging and the cheat sheet, and that's something that we can send out to people, and that will help lock them in also.
Great.
Venue support, as I mentioned, Sam at the ATP, Australian Technology Park, is awesome. She's going to be very helpful. Network. That's something that we needed to discuss, actually. There is internet connection that would be provided by the ATP. The strength of that, she said it's very good and we could rely on it. But if we're going to have wormholes coming in for external teams, we might need to look into having someone provide something a little bit stronger.
I think you most definitely will.
Yeah. So that can be something that someone could provide as a sponsorship, like an in-kind thing. We need to look into what sort of requirements we need and go from there. She made some recommendations for companies that we could work with on that to make sure that it all goes ahead smoothly, but I'm definitely open to everyone's suggestions for that because that's definitely not my area of expertise.
Great. I would hope that something called the Australian Technology Park would have pretty beefy internet, but then again.
When you start uploading and downloading images and yeah, it can get tricky. Just saying.
You would, and also this is Australia we're talking about, and we're famous for our terrible internet. So yeah, let's not get too excited.
What was next? Sponsorship. So this is probably something that Denise might be best to help discuss because she's been working with Heidi and a couple of other people in the foundation to help us come up with some packages, and they're reaching out to a couple of companies to help lock in the larger sponsors, and we'll start working on some smaller sponsors to cover some of the incidental costs as well. Denise, is there any update you wanted to provide there? No. Cool.
No,
right, so working on them.
Okay.
And then the opening, closing of the event, that's stuff that we'll do a little bit closer. That's easy. Things like recording, photography, the order of speakers, all that kind of stuff. So we'll work on a plan a little bit closer to the event for that.
Okay, great. Thanks again, Jess. Invitations is the next one. So if we're getting our theme right, I guess we have to target a bunch of people with save the dates and all that kind of stuff. Do we have, Jess or anyone else, do we have any boilerplate sort of templates or something like that for this kind of messaging, or are we going to get... Right, okay, cool.
Now that we've locked in the theme, I'll work on some wording. I should have something to you next week so we can start sending that out to people.
Great, yeah, I'd love to tweak that and get that right, particularly for our research developer audience, stuff like that. So, great, cool.
Yeah, there is a draft there, that's what I'll work from, and I'll just start throwing some of the overall theme messaging into it.
So Dave, I'm seeing a lot of action here.
Yeah. Well, let me just show everybody the draft, because now that we've decided the theme, This is the document, which hopefully everybody can see that on my screen. So now that we've kind of got a draft, what we need to do is we need everyone's help to commit to sending a save the date email out to groups of people to either to be different roles. So that might be participants, that might be mentors, it might be judges, it might be helpers, as in registration desk helpers, or just general volunteers. So the goal of this is to go around to everyone one at a time and get you to help us list people whom we should send this out to. Because of course, these invites work the best when they're from people who are within communities rather than us spamming communities. So yeah, if we could just basically, Steve, if you could kind of guide us one at a time, and or people just hop in the Etherpad and start listing the groups whom they could invite, that would be ideal.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'll start then because my name's first. Yeah, I can target researchers through universities, yeah, postgrads, resops like you have here. In particular, I can target the, I guess, developer community of research infrastructure, which covers a lot of the country and a lot of the larger universities in Australia. So I'll take that upon myself. All right, so we've got invites from Denise, Erin, and Flanders. So all the foundation members, do you want to comment on who you can target? Maybe we'll start with Denise if she's still around. Yep.
I'm still here, but I don't have a comment on that at the moment. So yeah, I'll work with Jess on all of that once we get to that point. So I'm sure that we can send out, you know, invitations to all the community lists within the OpenStack Foundation, things like that.
Great. Okay, we got Erin here today? I don't think so. Okay, maybe Flanders, you want to add to that and say how the foundation can target certain groups of people?
Yep. So yeah, I agree with Denise that we'll definitely target some of the mailing lists. I think Sonia is typing away madly down here around, or with Sonia, we'll have the ambassadors list, so I can add ambassadors. The other groups are previous hackathon teams. One of the things that I'd like to target for invites is virtual teams. So I'm going to reach out to the scientific working group and ask them to help recommend any off-site remote teams from different universities around the world who would like to be available via our little wormhole system, as in being on screen someplace. So I will target some of the virtual teams, and I'm glad to do that. I'd welcome any, yeah, and then yeah, any other recommendations people have. I'm glad to do some emailing once we have this up. Oh, there was another group I was looking for. Oh yes, I was really interested in the GovHack group. It's all entirely my fault now that I've trapdoored Alan, but it would be great if we could reach out, to example, to the winning teams at GovHack, because they all have applications which actually need to be put, you know, they've just been hacked together and they need to be put into a system that's more robust. So I'd like to target some of the government teams, as well as there's a couple of incubators. So UTS has a startup incubator program for their university, as well as does University of Melbourne. And Sonia and I will be doing some OpenStack Comes to Campus events next month. I believe Jess is going to come along as well. And at UTS. So we're going to target those groups as well to try to engage them. I think that's me. That'll keep me busy, at least for this next month.
Okay, good. Yeah, that'll keep you busy. Robin's doing a really good job of filling out her kind of target audiences. Do you want to speak to it as well, or do you want me to just read it, Robin?
I think okay. Robin's just watching via the live stream, so we've got the max number in the Hangout. That's always the problem with these.
Yeah, you're right. Yep. Okay, you're absolutely right. So the Ansible meetup in Sydney has, wow, 500 people that meet regularly. That's pretty awesome. With, okay, they have some Red Hat Ansible folks in the region who will likely be around for the summit and can use social. So yeah, leveraging that significant cohort, Sydney-based cohort, would be awesome. That's definitely like a crowd to get out to. Thanks, Robin. Yay, indeed, Flanders. I think we do actually have, yeah, regularly is impressive, Robert. I think we have Diane actually on the line here. So from OpenShift, do you want to comment on who you and the OpenShift folk can reach?
Yeah, I think that this similar situation, there's a number of meetups for OpenShift in the area and in the region, and we have a pretty extensive mailing list between the Commons and our OpenShift one. I also was thinking about reaching out to some folks like Telstra and some of the other OpenShift production deployments that are in the area and seeing about getting them involved as well and reaching out to their engineers to see if they would be mentors. So
yeah, great.
an email template. And Graham's there on the ground. He knows the people there, so we can use his connections too.
All right, Graham.
And there's a huge Python community as well in that area. So there's lots of folks we can hit up. Once we have the email templates, it'll be pretty easy.
Great, fantastic. Do you have anything to add to this, Graham? We've got a few minutes left for this section. I don't think we have, Graham.
Yeah, not too much. Like my main involvement is Python community. There are obviously lots of different language meetup groups. But the other one is there is a company in Melbourne who provides OpenShift hosting. So I don't know whether there's an avenue for getting them involved and getting mailing out through to their customer base, and they might be interested as well. That company is called OzNimbus.
Great. Okay, let's burn through the next bit in the next couple of minutes. If you don't mind, I might read the next one. Andy, Joanne, and Marcella from everywhere actually. Your mentor group. It's easy to target the Nectar Research Cloud DevOps, like the Australian Research Cloud, and of course DevOps in particular universities. I personally can help there a little bit as well with some of the other universities. Alan, who may still be in the chat, can do some government stuff, and I'll follow up with him to perhaps talk that out. Gonzalo. Not Gonzalo. Landers? Maybe not.
Yeah, no, I don't think he might be watching. He's based in Texas. I mean, he's one of the groups that I believe that the Agave platform is built at UTSA in University of Texas San Antonio, and I believe Gonzalo is there as well. He actually sits on the Hackathon steering committee as well, and helps approves hackathons. He's very busy. He's doing his PhD at the moment, so I will reach out to him and see if he's got any recommendations.
Okay, fantastic. And I'll just rip through this last one, which was kind of filled out before. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of OpenStack communities and previous attendees of events and the social media scene for OpenStack and all that to reach out to as well. Okay, before I move on from targeting, do you reckon there's anyone that we missed from all of this wealth of kind of people? Is there any audience we're not thinking about that we should be thinking about? Okay, cool. Well, you can always fill it out or shoot
Steve,
me
the only other one I do want to ask, I want to ask Melvin, because he's at the head of he's on the UC committee. So it'd be great to get Melvin's point of view on especially because he's also at Hawaii. So it'd be great to get Melvin's point of view.
All right. Well, I think we have Melvin on the mic at the moment, but maybe he's talking and muted, but either way.
Yeah, I can't hear you, Melvin. Sorry. If you could add your comments, Melvin, that'd be great. Oh, you Texas. Okay.
Great. Okay, well, with 5 minutes to go, maybe it's time to talk about sponsorship. I'm actually listed under this one, but I'll admit that I don't know a single thing about the sponsorship piece. So once again, Jess, I think this one might be on you to start, and then we can discuss.
Yeah, so this is something that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, there's a lot of costs involved in running the hackathon. We'd love to get a lot of in-kind sponsors involved, but we're also going to need funding to make everything work. So we are looking to have 2 major sponsors to help cover things like catering and the venue costs. Because overall, we're probably looking at about 100 grand to run the thing. So if we can get 2 sponsors locked in at 50 grand each, and then some other smaller sponsors to help cover the incidentals, things like printing, swag, PR, marketing, all that kind of stuff, then we should be able to cover our costs pretty well. We do have a couple of companies that the foundation is reaching out to, but if anyone has any suggestions for people who might like to be involved, or if your companies would like to sponsor, please let me know. I am working with the foundation on creating a sponsorship prospectus. They're in the process of deciding what sort of inclusions the major sponsors might get at the summit, whether that's involvement in the keynote or some sort of exposure that way. Once we've got all that locked in, then I'll have a pretty little PDF that we can send out to people. So just feel free to shoot me any contact information for people that you might like me to hit up for sponsorship, and I can take care of that. Venue we discussed, and swag. We've got the foundation sending us out some shirts, and we'll also create our own swag to give to people on the day as well. And that's also where the sponsorship dollars are going to come in handy for things like that. So I'll keep you posted once we've got a document to send out.
So it's also just worth mentioning that we will have different colors for the different types of roles. So the participants on the teams will have a color. The mentors will have a nice bright color so that they can be waved down and helped with. The judges will have a colored t-shirt. And of course, then the volunteers or helpers or the supporting cast, as in you and I, all of us on this call will have an organizer shirt. So if anyone has ideas on colors, do ping Jess on that. I think the red shirts are the only ones we've gotten blocked in for the mentors because they need to be visible. But yeah, it turns out to be, it actually makes for a really great environment. If you guys haven't seen videos of like the previous hackathons and the way that the shirts work, it does make for a nice visual effect for the event, especially as time-lapse footage with everybody moving around during the course of the 40 hours.
Fantastic. Okay, so look, there's nothing else on this list. I might actually surprise Flanders and pass this on to you to close up, you know, as the man who kind of is really behind this event. You know, do you want to say anything in closing?
No, I'm just really pleased how everybody's starting to come together. We're starting to get mentors come in. You know, we've had about 3 or 4 people already email saying, hey, I'm coming from overseas and it would be great to, you know, shake my jet lag by being a mentor and stuff like that. So I think it's setting up to be a really exciting and fun event. And I'm really proud and glad that everybody is kind of pitching in on this. And I think that with this save the date email going out, if everybody can get that out over the course of the next month, that's going to be really valuable because we'll start to see people coming in and we'll start to get an idea for how big this event is. You know, we're aiming for 200 to 300 people, you know, with mentors and everybody else. Maybe we even can push it close to 400. We'll see. The only last thing I'll touch on, Steve, is just purely logistics. I'll just remind everyone that the next meeting is planned for the last Friday in September. So we try to run these meetings on the last Friday, which I believe is please people correct me wrong, but in Australia time, that would be the 29th of September at 8:55 a.m. Melbourne. And we'll use this structure. I will resend that calendar item to confirm with everybody. And just to remind everyone, again, if you can attend the call and be on the Hangout and contribute, that's great. If you're just looking to lurk and watch the YouTube stream and then comment on the notepad, that's great as well. But if you're planning on saying something and stuff like that, please do make sure to get on the Hangout early so that you can have one of the speaking slots, because we're at a technology limit here on Hangout for the number of people who can get on it. And unfortunately, we were thinking about going to Zoom, but Zoom doesn't allow us to stream or automatically record this conversation, and we do try to uphold the opens. So that's my last bit of thing. Steve, do you want to close us off?
Yeah, no, this is shaping up to be quite good, I think. You know, I'm quietly confident that we'll have a great event. So thanks again for showing up, and for some of you at some strange times of the day. And we'll see you in a few weeks' time.
Great, cool. Thanks, everyone. See
Cheers.
you in a month's time.